Hi, everyone. I'm John Roach, co-founder and CEO of WholeStory. And on behalf of my co-founders, Darren Varnado and Aaron Aniker, who just disappeared, I'd like to welcome our panelists, audience members, and all those who are watching the streaming feeds on YouTube and Twitter. I'd also like to remind everyone that this panel is being recorded and will be shared in its entirety, along with some special outtakes here in the next week or two on all of our social media channels, as well as to the panelists themselves, so they can distribute them however they see fit. WholeStory is a technology platform that provides insight into life experience to power better hiring. And in our work, we collaborate and partner with people and stakeholders across pretty much the whole labor market spectrum: job seekers, employers, workforce developers, policymakers, and advocates for economic justice. With this big picture discussion series, we're aiming to take a step back from the detail level perspective of our day-to-day work to encourage a systems level conversation that incorporates all of these perspectives. We're conscious of the undeniable fact that we're at a historic inflection point in what's sometimes called the future of work, which is why today's panel is called Retraining the Workforce for the Now, future. This inflection point has come about as the huge impacts of automation, AI, the Internet of Things, and digital transformation have been accelerated by the effects of a global pandemic, as well as the cultural awakening around racial and economic justice that's been happening in this country over the last 6 months. In recent weeks, the presidential election and the prospect of a different federal policy approach to some of these issues has added an additional key variable into the mix. A month ago, we centered the conversation on how we lean into this moment and rebuild the workforce with a dual lens focused on empathy and equity. And you can see that panel discussion, the first of the Big Picture series, on our YouTube channel. But today, we turn the discussion to the critical question of how we retrain our workforce to meet the rapidly evolving conditions on the ground, and how we ensure that our underrepresented populations aren't left further behind in the process. So now I'd like to hand off the mic to my co-founder and WholeStory's head of business development, Darren Varnado, to guide today's discussion. Darren's experience growing up in the 70s and 80s in South Central Los Angeles, as a Navy veteran, as a former national account executive for GE during its time as the most valuable company in the world, and as an entrepreneur who, prior to WholeStory, built a company with, I think, over 100 employees. Darren can correct me on that number if I'm wrong, but built it from the ground up, his first company, ITM. And so Darren brings that diverse set of perspectives to the challenges and the tremendous opportunities that we have in this moment. Darren?
Thanks, John, for your kind words. My name is Darren Varnado, and I'm head of business development for WholeStory. Before we start, I'd like to maybe have the panelists introduce yourselves. Why don't we start with Shellie Willis? Shellie, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work you do?
Hello, my name is Shellie Willis. I am the Senior Director for Workforce Systems Alignment at Workforce Central. In Washington State, we have 12 workforce development boards, councils, and we are located in Region 6 in Pierce County in Tacoma specifically. And Workforce Central has the strategic oversight for Region 6 to, work in the areas of workforce and economic development.
Thank you, Shellie. Bhavani, could you share a little bit about yourself and the work you do?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Darren and WholeStory, for having me here. I'm very excited about participating in this discussion. My name is Bhavani Arabandi. I'm the Senior Research Associate at Urban Institute. We're primarily a research organization and do research on social and economic policy. But we are also very interested in the apprenticeship space. So I work on the workforce development and apprenticeship team, and we provide technical assistance to employers that want to start apprenticeship programs, and also help them not just establish, but also help them thrive and sustain those programs over long periods of time. My own background, I'm a labor sociologist, and I've spent several years in academia prior to this.
Thank you, Bhavani. David, could you share a little bit about yourself and your work?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is David Chavey-Reynaud. I am the Chief Operations Officer and getting a call at the worst time. I am the Chief Operations Officer for the Benton Franklin Workforce Development Council. Similar to Shellie, we are also a WDA in Washington State. We are WDA 11, covering both Benton and Franklin counties. And so we oversee approximately $5 million for workforce funds and channel that into the community to help further education, upgrading skills, job placement, as well as providing services to employers such as job fairs and helping get the word out on any positions that they potentially have available. I'm actually relatively new to my role in workforce. I have a background in economic development and have been making that transition, but the two are closely tied, and it's been fun. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Lauren, could you share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yeah, happy to. I'm thrilled to be here with you all. I didn't dig into all the other panelists' backgrounds. I'm so thrilled to be speaking with you all today, and to probably follow up for other conversations. My name is Lauren Sato. I'm the CEO here at Ada Developers Academy. Ada has been around since 2013, and we are a software development program. It's a year long here based in Seattle. And we focus on serving women and gender nonconforming adults. We spend 6 months in the classroom with our students and then do a 6-month internship apprenticeship on the back end. We've had about 450 students go through our program since our founding, and they are all working as software development engineers in our world's biggest tech companies here in Seattle. So I am a really, really deep and experiential believer in the power of workforce development to create economic change. I love that we're tying those two together already in this conversation. And I'm excited for this moment and this opportunity, like you mentioned, Darren, to step back and say, what do we need to do differently in our workforce development to create the economic and systems change that we really need to be able to move forward in a sustainable and inclusive way. So I'm thrilled to be here. I have a background in workforce development and on the other side in technology companies, the startup world here in Seattle. And this really does feel like a culminating moment for all of that work. So excited for our chat today.
Excellent. Thank you, panelists. Let's get to it. I'm going to start with the first question, and for this first question, to kind of set the table, I'd like for you guys to take 1, maybe 2 minutes, if you can, and I'll read it right now. The fourth industrial revolution includes rapid changes in job automation, industry disruption, and remote work, and has been accelerated by the impact of the pandemic. How has the workforce development industry evolved, either in business model or service delivery, in response to these shifts? Why don't we start with you, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, that's just like the perfect question for the moment. And I think that the way that I'm thinking about it has 2 parts. One, I think this is an incredible opportunity to really shine a light on the things that we've been doing that have been working that may have been flying under the radar. And I know that y'all talked to Year Up, I think, in your last conversation. I think they're another program that is unique in this space, but that has been working and doing this good work for a long time and getting folks into the workforce, into some of these differently skilled, I would say, I think we often say like higher skilled positions, but differently skilled positions. And they've been super effective at it. I would say ADA has also been living in that space. And it's great to have this opportunity to say, hey, we do know something that's working, and to be able to shine a light on that. And then I think that the challenge in front of us is really to figure out what scale looks like, and how do we leverage our existing institutions to scale the things that we know are working. So I'm thinking particularly about the community college system. What do we need to do there to leverage those spaces to take some of these best practices around apprenticeships and the effectiveness of those, and get our companies involved and really invested, like truly monetarily invested in these kinds of programs in order to implement them at scale.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Bhavani, would you like to give us weigh in on that question?
Sure, and I love that Lauren referenced community colleges and apprenticeships. That's exactly kind of where I'm going as well. I think businesses have truly embraced globalization, right? This is seen in foreign direct investment around the world, whether it's Google, IBM, Amazon going to India, or Indian, German, Swiss, Austrian companies investing in foreign direct investment in the States. So globalization has been a big thing in this era, I think. And businesses have also advanced, embraced tech advancement. Many companies have automated their production lines and the way they do business, whether it's offshoring, outsourcing, or hiring more or implementing more technology changes. But this has also given rise to a skills shortage, skills gap, and a talent shortage that we need to reconcile with. For instance, in 2019, there were about 7 million jobs that were unfilled in the US, right? And this is throughout, whether it was, low skill jobs or even middle skill and really high skill jobs, including those kinds of things. Employers say there's a huge disconnect between the higher education system and the training that's needed in the workforce. And research also suggests that employers want someone with experience, even for entry-level jobs. They want someone to hit the ground running. Well, workforce development has been working to keep up with these changes in globalization and technological advancement. But while businesses can move at the speed of light, the government and workforce development, right, moves a little slower. But there are huge federal government grants that are investing money in these kinds of promising programs. For example, since 2014, the federal government has invested about $1 billion in expanding apprenticeship. $2 billion has been spent on what Lauren just said, connect community colleges through the TACT grants, the Trade Adjustment Assistance, Community College, and Career Training grants. That's a mouthful. But this is to increase the capacity to provide education and training for in-demand jobs. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act also provides services to job seekers and employers with an emphasis on serving customers with barriers to employment, such as low-income adults and youth. So there's a lot of excitement with globalization and technological advancement. Workforce is still, while business has embraced it, workforce development is still trying to catch up with it. But there's some promising, developments on the horizon as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Bhavani. Shellie, I've been spending a lot of time lately down at Workforce Central, and there's a lot of dynamicism going on down there. How are you guys responding to this?
The biggest shifts that have already been kind of tapped into really was, we're in a moment where, every WDA is funded different, right? But we all receive Department of Labor dollars. We all have those federal funding moments. But I think the biggest thing that came out of this was the need to shift, like things that when we say innovation, workforce innovation and opportunity, the I kind of has been left out until we were forced to be able to shift. And it's not that we didn't want to, it's just how do we make that that trajectory path change and be able to serve businesses and our job seekers, as well as work with our system partners. So we've been able to really pivot. It seemed very quickly to be able to actually now have those transformative moments, do those virtual trainings, be able to connect with, I think businesses was to the point of being slow and not knowing what they needed until they know now. So it's taken a few months, I think, for even employers to be able to articulate what are our needs. Can we still do this work the same way we did it before? And then being able to make that change. And then that allows us to figure out how we can actually service them and provide assistance for what the needs are. Sometimes the way the job was being done, if there was an innovative thought process before COVID, then now that's the time where you get to tap into that transformative thinking and then make that shift. We have to find out what their needs are, but if a business doesn't know what those are, and then it's kind of been slow and churning, trying to find out what that is, and then you're able to provide those services, and how do we get ahead of that? So we've been able to make a few pivots on just connecting employers and job seekers together, being able to work with our system partners, especially on the education side, working up with our career and technical colleges, like what pivots have they had to make, and how do we support that, and what is the direction that we need to go in order to make those changes? So technology played a huge role in how we were able to change our service provision. There's a huge difference between job development, which usually happens in the education part, and workforce and economic development. There's a big distinguishment between the two. Job development, you're getting someone ready for something, but we're sitting up here in this workforce moment, we're tracking trends for employment. What are the highest, depending on your region, what are your industry sector needs? What are those areas that really are trending now? And it's interesting because we recently just found out retail was on a trend upward, where there was growth in that area, in that sector for employment needs, and people were getting hired. And then now we're finding ourselves having to take a step back, because that right there, now that you're going back through closures, now there's a step back. Hospitality's taking a huge hit. There can't be a whole lot of growth in that area. So it's really around the use of technology and finding different ways to share data. What objectives are we trying to meet? So data is playing a huge role along in that too, because now you have to change your perspective on exactly what is it that you need to know in order for you to provide the support, in order to make the change and drive the economy forward.
Excellent. David, I would imagine same industry, different part of the state, but similar issues. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really been a pleasure hearing everyone speak, because so many of these messages just resonate across multiple industries, off of Lauren talking about the need for community colleges and leveraging apprenticeships, which we're looking at here locally, because a lot of jobs are asking for some of that experience, and they're looking for that experience, even for entry-level positions. And so we're needing to look at new ways to train up our workforce, and different ways, and kind of forced innovation. I liked that term. But we're looking at new certificates and ways. We just recently had a conversation with a local community college about ways to build certificates in which it's a part-time on and off system, where we can have them apprenticeship. We can put up an apprenticeship with local businesses, and the business can help perhaps sponsor the education, and the participants are able to both work on their certificate over the course of a few years, as well as get that work experience at the exact same time. We're looking at digital literacy and gaps in digital literacy between certain demographics. That's been an issue for several years, but with the pandemic, a bright spotlight has just been shown directly on that, as we are working with specific populations who are struggling now to find jobs, to navigate websites, to even navigate our own services that we're offering. So as a WDA, we're constantly asking the question, hey, how can we get that message out? How can we better serve our community? How can we reach these typically hard to reach populations, especially when we can't go out and physically interact with them? So we're looking, and we're also trying to anticipate the needs of our business community. We have a survey that we've applied a couple of different times over the course of the last 10 months, and the answers are different every single time in terms of what the needs are and where the pivots are. The surveys that we collected back in May and June of businesses that were in crisis look very, very different than the surveys that we collected a couple months ago. And in Washington State, with new restrictions, they're going to look very different than what we would see right now. So with that constant change in information, we're put in a position where we're just trying to guess what the gaps are going to be and how to fill them. We've got 10 things that we're juggling at the same time, and we're not sure if 3 of them are going to be taken away or a chainsaw is going to be thrown into the mix. And so we're just taking a ready position in which we're trying to pivot and respond to our local needs as necessary. And when it comes to the Industrial Revolution, it hasn't hit all areas quite the same way. In this area specifically, we actually have a shortage of people who are trained up in the trades. And so we're looking to get some more training out there for jobs in manufacturing, for jobs out at a couple of our local employers. We're in need of electrical engineers, and there are needs in the construction industry. There are needs in the energy sector, and these are certificates that we're trying to push instead of some 4-year paths. And we're just trying to make sure that our population in general knows that there are multiple options available, despite how you want to enter the workforce.
Excellent. Excellent response, David. I really appreciate your comment around digital literacy. We'll be drilling down on that a little later in the conversation. I'm going to move to the second question here. The impact of the 4th Industrial Revolution are highlighting the need for soft skills on a level that we've never seen before. Character strengths, leadership traits, and people skills are essential to building resilient and agile organizations that can serve the new economy. In fact, a recent report revealed that 53% of CEOs and business leaders surveyed agreed that between half and all of their workforce will need to change their skills and capabilities in the next 3 years. How can employers and workforce development programs partner to address the needs for soft skills in this new economy? If you have some specific examples, we'd love to hear some of those as well. Why don't we start with you, Shellie?
Well, I'm going to change the name from soft skills to essential skills. We really have to change our mindset around, we say soft skills, but these are essential skill sets, but we have to align those skill sets with what today's new way of work looks like. And it doesn't look the same as it did yesterday. So you're thinking about having the ability to be able to communicate virtually and still ensure that whatever you do or say resonates with the person on the other side or within the group. Being able to moderate, as our good sweet friend here over here, Bhavani, she talked about being able to moderate large groups and capabilities. Even someone who's a consummate professional, they've been working for years. This is a new way of work. These are new skill sets. Being able to communicate in a way to where your facial features and your tone really does matter in this moment. Those face-to-face communications and connections. How are we strengthening or shoring up those areas in which we didn't really actually have to use as much, especially if you weren't the presenter and now you're the presenter. You're doing all of the things. You're trying to manage all of those. And so there are a lot of different service providers. I still lean back to our education partners. They're in some of our local providers who are working with our dislocated workers, adults, young adults. they're tapping into those skill sets, because it can create a level of anxiety that you weren't prepared for, having to do this, making sure all of your technology, having the technological knowledge in the first place to be able to do it. So you're tapping into different areas of being able to shore up those skills and get people and provide a place where people are confident and able to do them. So now you're looking at how to operate Zoom. That is a whole workshop. That's a whole training. That's a whole skill set. How to communicate virtually. You need to understand how tone and text and communication works in this virtual world. So there are a lot of providers and education partners who have those things. Now they've built them into their trainings, and they've so that they're able to add that. So now, instead of talking about how to shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye, now you're having a different conversation, and you're creating different ways of work. So in order to do that, you have to be able to have the ability to train them up on that and make people comfortable in that new way of work. But now, does that apply to every area? No, it doesn't apply to apprenticeships per se. If you're in trades and apprenticeships, you still are physically out there working. There's a separation in how we work between blue collar and white collar. So those skills, it's still in alignment with whatever the direction of the actual career is in alignment with. So you're thinking about those two different areas at the same time.
I see. It's soft skills, the new essential skills. I like that. Bhavani, would you like to weigh in on this question?
Sure. So I think apprenticeship has to do more than just technical training, right? And that is something that's really, really important to think about. Several apprenticeship sponsors, employers, apprentices that we talk about the importance of soft skills, not just, or essential skills, as Shellie said, not things that are just necessarily learned in the classroom or show up on a resume, for example. But Apprenticeship 2000 is a long-standing youth apprenticeship program in North Carolina. It's been around for more than 25 years. And according to the Advanced Manufacturing Employers, this is an organized consortia of manufacturing employers that run an apprenticeship program. One of the reasons they work with high school students is that they're young and have the capacity to learn quickly, they say. They aren't spoiled by everything else, they say. And one of the apprentices at Apprenticeship 2000, who works for an Austrian manufacturing company, said, "Apprenticeship has helped me grow as a person." He says he will carry the communication, teamwork, and time management skills that he learned from his apprenticeship for the rest of his life, right? Also, on-the-job component of several apprenticeship programs, there are components for communication, customer focus, and troubleshooting and documentation that are included. Mentors work closely with apprentices like, the person that I just mentioned, to improve their soft skills or essential skills again. Another area which focuses on these essential skills development is a related instruction or classroom training component. So they don't just learn these essential skills on the job, but also in the classroom. Several apprenticeship programs include classes on business writing, oral communication, customer service, and general computer skills, right? All of these organizations and businesses say are needed to do the work in their companies. These programs are often thinking of this training as an investment into the employees, right? And see apprenticeship as a start to their career pathway. So they expect these employees to stay with them for a very, very long time. And apprenticeship has a 94% retention rate, by the way. So it's these kinds of investments, right? The investment in not just on-the-job training and related theoretical instruction, but also essential skills that actually fit in those interstitial spaces between, right? About doing the work, what work involves and everything. So I think soft skills or essential skills are very, very essential.
Excellent. Thank you, Bhavani. Lauren, I would imagine that this is a top of mind issue for you guys over at ADA as well. Yes?
Yeah. I mean, we learned really early on, just sending underrepresented folks into the tech industry with tech skills wasn't going to be enough. and to pick up the apprenticeship baton. I think that what we've really learned is your in-classroom learning can only go so far when it comes to these on-the-job kind of skills that are so necessary. You know, the things that we see our students gain on their internships is really centers around collaboration and team problem solving. And so those are things that we've tried to bring into the classroom, but they really get solidified during that internship apprenticeship stage of the program. On the other side of things, what we've learned is that the folks who are already working at technology companies, our managers that we work with, also need to continue to learn and unlearn and relearn their skills. And particularly as we think about things like how to be an anti-racist in the workplace, how to manage folks who aren't cisgender white men, because it needs to look differently. And that's a space that we have increasingly found ourselves being asked to play a role, and that we have stepped into increasingly over the last several months. Particularly this year it's become acute, but it's been a need for certainly much longer than that. So in terms of the folks who are in the companies that we were working with and our alums, in terms of ongoing learning, it really does center around how to be an inclusive manager, team member, and how to continue to grow your career and advocate for yourself and for those around you as you move forward. One of the frankly just really difficult pieces of feedback that I received early on when I joined the organization in January of this year was, you know, you need to be careful you're not creating a class system in technology. You're getting folks in who look different than the existing workforce, but are they advancing? And that was something that has really stuck with me, and that we as an organization have been really focused on. How do we ensure that folks are continuing to advance once they get into these industries that they historically didn't have access to? So those leadership development skills, those on-the-job collaboration and team skills on more diverse teams than our technology companies have seen before are really critical.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. David, I would imagine that that this is a significant issue that you guys are tackling as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, just building off of what's been said, I think a lot of what can be learned from soft skills is typically from the top down. So when we are discussing with employers exactly how to address some of these needs in their workforce, one of the first things that we would suggest is taking a look at management and seeing, are you creating an environment in which soft skills, essential skills, I also love that, essential skills are valued. And so as a part of the question, 53% of CEOs agree that between half and all of their workforce will need to change their skills and abilities over the next 3 years. That means that you need to create an environment in which professional development and skill development is valued and rewarded, and that the people involved in the company feel rewarded as people. I love that over the last 10 years, essential skills has come to the forefront of the discussion of what's valued in the workplace, because I think it's absolutely essential to creating a positive and effective environment for the workers. But we're still sort of in this position of figuring out what the best way to address that is. And I absolutely think that it's definitely seeing it. And so you can have a class on that. You can have a class on communication in college, or a certification program, but nothing really beats seeing and being involved in an environment that is already positive and healthy, and seeing, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. I know any number of people who have gone from a negative work experience or a negative environment to a positive environment, and suddenly just the commentary of, oh, I didn't even know it could be like this. And with that comes motivation for improving their own skill sets and their own abilities. And so that's where those internships, work experiences, on-the-job experiences are so pivotal, especially for our youth and for anybody who is making a career pivot or are in an upskill program. And then within organizations, making sure that either retreats or opportunities of expression and professional development opportunities are just there and available, so that when, okay, we need to upskill in this role, or we need our employees to take on these certain skills, and we're going to work on addressing these needs over the next 3 years, it is so much easier as a business to pivot in that sense if that environment has already been put into place. And I kind of attribute it as a classroom. It's way easier to thrive and to move forward as a student in a well-behaved and well-managed and well-supported classroom. Whereas if your classroom is in chaos, it's way easier to kind of fall one way or another. Or the opposite, if your classroom is just incredibly strict and you're never allowed any form of expression, it just, you don't feel whole, and it breeds discontent. And bringing that into the work environment, I think, is pivotal to continue to develop these issues.
Great insights. Thank you, David. I'm going to move on to the next question here. Along the lines of the last question, the World Economic Forum estimates 133 million new jobs in major economies will be created to meet the demands of the fourth industrial revolution. Studies show that women and people of color can have important soft skills such as empathy, adaptability, grit, and an entrepreneurial mindset, which are critical for success in an ever-changing global workforce. My question is, how are workforce development programs impacting equity in the workforce and ensuring that women and people of color are trained and ready for these jobs of the future, or these now jobs of the future? We'll start with you, Shellie.
I must look very quick. So it's always a part of the work we do. We serve underrepresented populations. We are when you think about the whole holistic realm of workforce development and the populations that we target, you're either unemployed, you're underemployed. But equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, it's all a part of the work we do and the way we do it. We've taken an interesting transition though. In Pierce County, we have been able to launch our Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force. That has really brought in all of our community-based organizations, employers, our nonprofits, our grassroots movements here in Pierce County. And that has really been a part of the discussion of making sure there's an equitable access to the workforce. And so also one of the things that we've done is we've really been intentional about our certified sites. So if you're in Pierce County and you have the WorkSource brand on your virtual door or your brick and mortar door, that means you had to go through a whole different standard of certification levels. But it's important to understand that we know where our gaps are. We have rural areas where people we can't reach everyone. We have plenty of grassroots movements in our city areas, but it doesn't mean we touch everyone. It doesn't mean, we have schools, students who are disenfranchised, communities that are separated, and families who are missing out. They don't have access to technology. They don't have the ability to look for jobs. Employers can't find them because they lack access. So the whole focus here has been about creating access, making sure that we are getting it out to our communities that lack it. So we want to make sure that there is a way that we can actually touch everyone. And our community engagement task force that we've launched has really taken off as far as being able to have those community conversations. We're the convener. So we are bringing everyone together to have those conversations and act. So we're not just talking about it, we are actually acting. We're working on how do we get into these, how do we work with employers to change how they hire? So working it from the inside out. Do you have an equitable workforce within your business? Or what does your workforce look like internally? How do we help you change that, right? How do we actually attack that from the inside out and work that way? And that way, when you do start to recruit, or you want to recruit talent, you're looking at where your gaps are. We have to get away from just checking a box, counting a bean, counting a number. We have all of these programmatic outcomes to meet that are connected to grant dollars. How do we change that? How do we make it so that we're really intentionally thinking about how we hire and who we hire, and where are we fragmented at? And so launching our task force really has been a breath of fresh air, because it's brought our community engagement efforts really to the forefront. And it's made it so that we're holding employers accountable, but we're also holding the entire community accountable in order to do that. We have a whole young adult population. We want information from them, but we weren't creating a way for them to be able to always consistently grow and learn skills and do the things that they need to do. So those are the things that we've done here to be able to ensure that we are accountable and responsible to grow from the inside out and change the way that we do business, the way we do work.
Thanks for sharing, Shellie. And I want to just put out a plug for your community engagement, which is led by Tamara Jackson. It's outstanding. I attended one of the workshops about 2 weeks ago. I encourage anyone to check it out. It's just very, very impressive. So thanks a lot for sharing, Shellie. Bhavani, would you like to weigh in?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think this is a question I'm really passionate about. And one of the biggest ways to impact equity in the workforce is to make sure there's a representation. There are people in those seats, and at all levels of an organization, not just entry level, but also in middle management, in leadership positions. And that is an important space to occupy in order to make change, I think, to create change. And I have some inspiring examples from the folks that we work with. It's well known that the tech sector has a diversity problem, a gender diversity problem, a racial and ethnic diversity problem, a lot of different issues here. Courtney Jackson is a CEO of Paragon Cyber Solutions, is a cybersecurity expert and a thought leader. She not only recognizes the glass ceiling that women and people of color face, but has experienced it herself. In an interview, she said, we have to come in at an 8 or a 9, really, while others can come in at a 5 or a 6, referring to the higher expectations for women and people of color, right? She is working really hard to bring more diversity into the tech sector and actually mentoring young women in this sector. Sarah Boyceberg is the founder of New Collar Network and works in manufacturing, again, a male-dominated industry sector. She founded Fab Lab Hub, that is a part of MIT's Fab Lab network, and she works with she just started an apprenticeship program in New Mexico that is recruiting from the Native American communities in the state, right? Bringing these the populations that have been excluded so far into this advanced manufacturing space. Google as well is working to bring in more diversity into its apprenticeship program and as a company at large as well. Step It Up America, right, has, this is Expansion, this is the organization called Expansion, who have, a talent development program that identifies and trains diverse talent through hiring veterans, women, and minority resource folks to solve the nation's technology talent shortages. Through its initiative, basically they consistently train and place qualified people by building the talent pipeline. While apprenticeship programs definitely open the doors, right, for women and people of color to get in, our work does not end there. We need to make sure that the company culture lets people and women and people of color and everyone else thrive and advance. One way to do this is to create policies and laws. In 2018, Women on Boards was signed into law. This was a bill that was signed into law to advance equitable gender representation on California corporate boards. California is now leading the way as the first state in the nation to require all publicly held domestic or foreign corporations whose principal executive offices are located in California to have at least one female director on their boards by December 31st, 2019. What's the result? Out of 330 corporations that were impacted by this ruling, 282 corporations complied by it by the end of 2019. Right?
Wow.
That is immense. That is amazing. It's putting these people, right? Women on boards is a really big step. So there are things that are going on, again, in the workforce development space that I'm really excited about. Can we do more? Yes, absolutely. But this is a good place to start, I think. People like Courtney Jackson, Sarah Boyceberg, Google, IBM, Women on Boards are really exciting programs to begin with and inspiring.
That's very inspiring, Bhavani, and I'm especially happy that you gave a plug for California. I didn't expect to feel so happy to be from California this morning. So thanks for sharing that. I'm glad that they're leading the way in there. Lauren, I kind of feel like this is a tailor-made question for you. So just take it away. I mean, this is an excellent question for your organization to address.
No, I mean, I think that it has been so fully answered already, and I'm so excited to be in this company. I think on the employee development side of things, or the workforce development side of things, I'm so grateful to Shellie and David and your counterparts who are doing the work around access, because it's just so critical. And we know that there's a significant divide between folks who have access to computers, who have access to the internet, who are able to even know that programs like ours exist. And you all are doing that work every day, and I'm so appreciative of that. We had one of our students present to our board a few months ago, and she said that she had in college started a computer science program, and she got to the first day of class, and she showed up and was the only Black woman in the class, and everybody else was leaps and bounds ahead of her. And they had been working on learning coding since they were in elementary school. And she walked out of there, dropped the program, and just said, I have no idea how all these white kids got computers. And I mean, that to me would just like summed up that problem around access that we're not going to be able to solve just at the training, at the point where we're doing the technical training. So I'm so grateful for programs who are working prior to that to ensure folks have that digital access and that digital literacy. I'm going to be that annoying panelist, and also because all of the good ideas have already been shared, who flips the question a little bit and talks about the hiring side, because I do come from a role focused on recruitment in tech. And I would say probably 5 years ago, we were really talking about DEI, and we were leading with diversity. How do we diversify our workforces? And what we have just learned time and time again is that women are still leaving the workforce. 42% of women are leaving the workforce after they have children still. And so it almost doesn't matter how many diversity programs we have around hiring if folks are leaving so quickly. And folks are leaving because we haven't systemically solved the problem of inclusion and equity. Because once you arrive at a technology company, are you being treated equitably? Or do you have an equitable chance to advance? Are the systems in place? Are the benefits in place to make sure that you are able to advance at parity with your peers? We have ball pits in our technology companies, but no childcare. We need to think about these things that we're doing in that space first before we try to shove a bunch of diversity into a company. And so that is at least what's at top of mind right now. We do have incredible skill sets in these communities who haven't had access. And we do need to provide them with that access and with the technical training. But almost more importantly for me is that we get our companies prepared to be spaces where folks can thrive, regardless of where they're coming from.
Sounds like you're saying these companies need to be more intentionally including their employees.
Right, both on the essential skills side and the management skills side, but on a systems level as well. Like, how are we thinking about our benefits programs and things like that?
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. I'm gonna shift a bit here and focus on youth for a second. Here's a question. Before the pandemic, the U.S. had made consistent and substantive progress in improving youth employment outcomes, reducing the number of unemployed to 4.5 million. With the effects of the pandemic, however, that number has doubled. Nearly 1 in 4, or an estimated 9 million opportunity youth, that's young people between 16 and 24, are completely disconnected. They're neither in school nor are they employed. What are workforce development programs doing to help employers identify, hire, and retain opportunity youth? I'm going to come back to you, Shellie. Can you kick us off with responding to that?
I was gonna say, Lauren or David or Bhavani. Okay, so honestly, I would go back to the task force and the reason why we were able to have these conversations around youth engagement. Young adults are, at least I can say in Pierce County, one of our highest homeless populations here. Being able to get them into programs where they get the work experience that they need, where they're able to not only get the work experience, do on-the-job training programs, and whether that would be through our career technical college, apprenticeship programs. There's all types of avenues of approach that we're taking. It's about access and outreach. So being able to reach out to that, where they are, they're not just sitting outside, your front door. And they, in working with the community-based organizations of those grassroots movements where they're actually targeting the young adult population so that we can get them through their barrier removals to get them to employment. Employment is usually the last rung on the ladder. People need stable housing. They need, if there's mental health issues and challenges, they need those barriers addressed to get to employment, to be able to be retained. So we don't want to just keep having to repeat the cycle. And working with our young adults, we have several programs that are going on now. There's, where we're partnering with Goodwill, we're partnering with, we have the SWAG program, the recovery program. There's different programs going on here in Pierce County where we're actually working with our community-based organizations and other agencies and partners to target our young adult population, to get them the essential skills that they need, working on thinking in the realm of career pathways. So it's a whole career pathway model of being able to target them, but not using them just for their knowledge and, how do we find young adults and how do we get to connect with your population? You really the door has to be open and there has to be opportunity there. So there's multiple ways. David mentioned earlier, work experience, OJ, on-the-job training opportunities, internships, apprenticeships, fellowships. So there's multiple avenues of approach, but it still comes back to the conversation of access and having the tools that you need to be able to do what you're doing, and working with these organizations who directly serve the young adult population to keep them in some type of safe and suitable housing, and provide them with the assistance they need so that those barriers that keep them from employment in the first place won't be a problem while we're trying to get them to their next.
I see. David, your name was brought up. Would you like to expand on that a bit?
Absolutely. So directly under our program, we typically work with out-of-school youth, 16 to 24. However, we're in partnership with ESD 123 to also serve in-school youth of similar ages. And in terms of, I like this this phrase, the wraparound programs. And so right now our goals are to identify youth. We work very closely with the local high schools in order to identify youth that we need to be engaging with, and then immediately provide that consistent support. And we can constantly co-enroll them as they continue to develop. So if we have a youth at 18 who is out of school, we're able to enroll them in a program and then continue to track them over the course of the years. And when they hit that 24 age mark, we're able to then transfer them into the adult program and continue to provide support as necessary. And support is vital. Once again, addressing some gaps that we can see between some populations, or just youth in general. If you have a family that can support you through this entire transition and into from school into the job experience, then that's excellent. But a lot of youth don't have that. And so instead we're looking to, how can we provide that constant source of support? How can we provide that either through, we have open doors programs, we have junior achievement, we have young professional programs where youth feel empowered to continue to take advantage and have control over their future and exactly how they develop. Because it's both the technical skill side as well as just the general support of, okay, we can do this. And we have a lot of those sort of general programs and general skills. You know, how do I build a LinkedIn profile? How do I build my first resume? Exactly how do I communicate a skill set? And a lot of that is incredibly necessary for those first steps. And once again, kind of enforcing that, just that transition from your academic life into the work experience, or taking advantage of new certificates. And just constantly, I find that the message that is sometimes the hardest or takes the longest to convey is you have options. There are options and there are opportunities available to you, because a lot of times a mindset has been set that, no, I'm going to be stuck. I'm not going to be able to proceed or progress in any meaningful way. And so one of the biggest things that we're constantly trying to put out there is there are options. And that not only applies to youth, but for several of the other communities that we're trying to communicate to as well. But it's one of our most important messages is there are opportunities out there. We're here to help.
Excellent, excellent. Bhavani, could you share some insights on this question with us?
Yeah, sure. So there are millions of young people that are not in school, and neither are they at work, right? I mean, so a lot of researchers have called this a leaky pipeline situation, where students fall off somewhere between high school and college. They're not in high school, or they've just, graduated high school but don't show up in college. There's definitely a leaky pipeline going through this. There are a few federal initiatives that work with opportunity youth. Youth Build is one of those. These give at-risk youth ages 16 to 24 the opportunity to transform their lives by earning a high school diploma or state-recognized degree. They are mostly concentrated. They do provide some kind of occupational skills training, but they're mostly focused in construction work and are just now branching out to other occupations. Another program is Job Corps, right? Most of you have heard of this, which is the nation's largest residential education and job training program for at-risk youth, again, ages 16 to 24. They also serve the hardest to serve, in a sense, that group of people. And a big part of the goal is also to make sure these kids get their GEDs. Youth Apprenticeship, I keep going back to apprenticeship because it's such a great program. Urban Institute works on a youth apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor. And we connect young people to apprenticeship programs at high schools, and they can combine academic and technical classroom instruction with work experience through a registered apprenticeship program. It provides this youth apprenticeship program basically provides a foundation for students to choose among multiple pathways after high school, not just construction or the traditional trades, but actually, occupations in emerging sectors like IT, healthcare. And we also have an apprenticeship program in drone pilots. So that is the range of occupations that we help provide. But once they graduate from the apprenticeship program, these young people can enroll in college or get a full-time job. A lot of them are employed, or do a combination of both. If you think about Iowa, Kim Reynolds was on one of our panels last week, And she talked about, she's the governor of Iowa, and she talked about 34 schools in Iowa participating in a youth apprenticeship program. And they have STEM occupations in these programs, right? So these are not just for, trades anymore, although trades occupy a big, big part of it. And there are several organizations that are working to bring, women into these trades, like the Chicago Women in Trades organization. But there are lots that are emerging in emerging sectors, in healthcare, IT, cybersecurity, like, Paragon is doing with Courtney Jackson, advanced manufacturing, robotics. I mean, think about it. They have financial services, banking has apprenticeships these days. So it's no longer something that we're, just restricted to a few occupations, but they've really, really expanded their occupations. And that is the exciting part about the youth apprenticeship program. I think if there is an employer that is willing to create a youth apprenticeship program, we are willing to work with them to create a standard that works for them, for that company. And we customize these standards for them, the work, the on-the-job training and the related instruction. We work with community colleges where students can earn dual degrees. So most of our programs, graduate students with an associate's degree when they finish their apprenticeship program, so they can go on to college or stay on and work. So it's a really, really exciting thing.
Excellent. Thanks so much. This next question is going to touch on, digital literacy was brought up earlier, so we're gonna come back to that right now. Here's a question. Digitization in every industry has been accelerated by the pandemic. However, not all workers have digital literacy. The recent 2020 Career Navigation Technology Report from JFF Labs highlights how tools for job seekers are predominantly oriented toward those who speak English fluently, seeking white-collar jobs, and assumes a basic level of digital literacy. Here's an interesting quote we pulled out that came out of this document. Platforms for employers seeking workers are seemingly everywhere, as are tools for corporate workers looking for new professional opportunities. But for the American workers in entry-level or mid-skill jobs, especially the 73% who don't have a college degree, the process of finding a career is chaotic, seemingly random, and ultimately broken. How are workforce development programs addressing the digital literacy gap and embracing innovative digital tools to help? Let's start with you, Shellie, again. It's the background.
Is it the background?
It's the background.
Repeat the back end of the question again for me really quick. I want to make sure I actually.
Sure. How are workforce development programs addressing the digital literacy gap and embracing innovative digital tools that can help?
I would say that it's the direction we had to go, but it wasn't a direction we didn't want to go. Digital literacy has always been a part of the curriculum and how training to employment has happened, but now that has had to level up. Now, as we said earlier, addressing how to simply use a virtual platform to actually start your meeting, how to properly moderate or facilitate communication, how to actually interact. And so I think that digital literacy and the knowledge of understanding simply just how to check your email, those basic essential things that you need to know, that has actually come to the forefront of training, education, and employment. So I think that it's a key in that it has actually become like the foundation of work. So we have to know it. So no matter what your work is, the basic things of calculation, understanding how to work, we went from needing to know how to 10 key to needing to know how to put in spreadsheets so that it's just, I think it's a part of the cycle of innovation that we've had to take. And as far as workforce development is concerned, we've always been top of mind with that, even around the area of artificial intelligence and what type of skill sets you need to understand how to operate in that way. So we've always had that at the forefront, and this moment has just sped that up and making it a part of the foundation and the cycle of learning on how we actually work with not just employers, but job seekers as well.
Excellent, excellent. David, maybe a little compare and contrast from your view on the other side of the mountains there.
Absolutely. And the struggle with digital literacy amongst our populations is a constant conversation over here. We have a significantly large Spanish population, especially Spanish-speaking population, who a lot of times don't have access to broadband, don't have access to computers, are not necessarily familiar with a lot of the common platforms that we are posting jobs and opportunities on. And so that's just kind of expanding on our conversation about how are we using our communication pipeline and how can we better reach these populations. And then once those populations are reached, making sure that we are providing the services necessary in order to address any digital illiteracy or providing upskill opportunities. So for example, right now we're looking to potentially expand a laptop loaner program to ensure that people have access to computers and providing training on how to use those laptops, how to build those profiles, and continue to expand on that skill set. On the flip side, as we're working with employers, especially as they're looking to fill certain positions, a lot of, like I said earlier, a good chunk of this population doesn't necessarily have access to computers, but what we are finding is that most still have access to smartphones. And so optimizing websites or advertisements or job postings so that they can be easily viewed and navigated on a smartphone. And so all of this just kind of builds into, I mean, the goal is eventual digital literacy across all populations, but it's going to take a while to get there. And in the meantime, we need to work at this from both angles. We're also working to simply expand the idea that access to broadband, access to internet access in general is becoming essential necessity. It's becoming more and more of a necessity for people to operate in today's environment, for us to connect to each other, especially over the last 10 months in the pandemic. I mean, for social reasons alone, but also for professional development and you know, communicating with these employers, it's essential. So we're also working to see how can we constantly get better at providing these opportunities.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Lauren, would you like to, I would imagine that you can't even get into Ada without some basic digital literacy, right? This is like day one for you, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so thrilled to get caught up on what y'all are doing at WDAs, because that's so true for us. When myself and my counterparts, Fred, who you had on last week, get together, we just end up bemoaning our economic structure. That means that we, in these nonprofit training programs, have to use every last one of our resources to train the students who are in our spaces. And what we really need at a systems level is the infrastructure to help folks find us and navigate from one program to the next in a pathway that leads to a career. Because we also at Ada don't train brand new technologists. Folks have had to be playing with code a little bit on their own. And so we are trying to build that connective tissue with other organizations who are taking people from zero, but we don't have the resources to do that. And so what we really desperately need and what the community really needs is that connective tissue. So I'm so excited to hear about all the things y'all are doing to get folks computers. I mean, broadband and childcare are the new bridges and roads, and I wish that we would accept that as a broader
Interesting.
society. yeah, I will keep on that drumbeat as long as I live. But thrilled to hear what y'all are doing. And I think that the statement, the process of finding a career is chaotic, seemingly random, and ultimately broken. And I think the process leading up to that is, you know, potentially even worse, where you don't even have access. So we are not necessarily directly engaged in that space. We're trying to figure out how to do this amongst ourselves as training programs. But we need y'all. We need more infrastructure around this to help people really not fall through the cracks.
If I could just jump in real quick to address that with Lauren. And I think that's why it's so key. Like it's all about like what you don't know or who you're not, you know, the connection of it, which is why that community engagement effort is so important, because then you're able to learn or connect with someone locally who can actually help you with that piece of the infrastructure that you're missing. And I think that this conversation is so necessary because it does open up you know, just your ability to be able to connect and say, okay, you just said that we're missing this part, or we don't have the ability within our own infrastructure to be able to provide that, and that's where the connection is. And I think that would be, I think definitely that's needed. I think that we could do that. We could help you connect.
Thank you, Shellie. Bhavani, would you like to weigh in on this question? And by the way, we'll have this be our last question. And I'll turn it over to our MC, John Roach, who will take some audience questions. Okay, so please go ahead, Bhavani.
Sure. Lauren, that's, I think you're right. I mean, there's a big issue with, you know, having young people or adults come to the organization with some computer skills already. And the good news is that there are some organizations that are working in that space. The Urban Technology Project is a joint enterprise between communities in schools of Philadelphia and the school district of Philadelphia, focusing on opportunity youth, the young people between the ages of 16 to 24 who are not in school or at the workplace. They have a digital services fellows pre-apprenticeship program for recent Philadelphia high school graduates who are interested in IT. And participants receive a mentorship from a technician or a computer support specialist in how to repair computers, but also organizational systems, IT project management, and other skills to be good at IT. So there are programs that train, you know, young people in this pre-apprenticeship phase to get them ready for an apprenticeship program. The students who excel with this opportunity get to interview with a registered apprenticeship program, and they typically place about 80% of these pre-apprenticeship graduates. That's how you know, well trained they are, and they also serve a diverse population, including people with disabilities and things. And they have a very strong retention rate with employers. The great part about an apprenticeship program is that you don't need a college degree to start one. Right, you can go in with a high school degree, or you can join a pre-apprenticeship program that'll help you get a GED, and be placed into, you know, an apprenticeship program where they will pay you from day one and train you. And a lot of programs get you a nationally recognized, and all programs actually get you a nationally recognized credential at the end of it. So there are some organizations that are working in this space, and I hope, you know, folks can connect in this space.
Excellent. Thank you so much, panelists. This has been fun and very informative. At this time, like I said, I'm going to turn it over to John Roach, who is going to field a couple of questions from the audience. Thank you.
Everybody, you all have been fabulous. So educational and enlightening. We have kind of a two-part question from one of our audience members that who is the executive director, the formerly incarcerated executive director of What's Next Washington. And she asks a question that's close to my heart as someone who personally has now 20-year-old conviction history myself that still follows me everywhere I go. Every time I've applied and interviewed for employment in the last 2 decades, I've had to contend with this, this part of my history. So this hits very close to home, this question. And so this panelist asks, this audience member asks how you, directed at the panelists, are directly addressing people with conviction histories. There are 1 million people in Washington state alone who are convicted of a crime, and this disproportionately impacts Black, Brown, and Native communities. Most employers have strict policies on hiring, and some are constrained by regulatory and licensing barriers. So how are you addressing the systemic barriers that impact this demographic? And then she specifically was looking for workforce development perspectives on that in particular. So I tried to do my best to combine that 2-part question, but I'm very curious myself, what, if any, perspective any of the panelists may have to share on that general area. And I'll just open it up rather than direct the question to any particular panelist if there's anyone who has something to share to get us started.
I can be really brief. Our approach has been twofold. One is to partner with a group called Unloop that is focused on ensuring folks who are coming out of the system are able to get trained for employment. And they've been a fantastic partner. And then historically, I've been involved in Ban the Box initiatives, and I think there's just a lot of work in the advocacy space. We obviously work with companies and can encourage them in their practices, but we don't necessarily have the influence to change their internal practices on this. Whereas from an advocacy perspective, I think that we have some work to do. There has been some good progress across the country, but still we certainly have a ways to go, and I think we have to do that together.
Thank you, Lauren. Shellie or David, anything from either of your WDA? I get the acronyms. There's so many acronyms in the workforce development space, so hopefully I get that one right. But anything particularly that's happening within those public-private partnership type environments that addresses some of these systemic challenges for this population?
So here at the Benton Franklin WDA, and you're right, there are a million different acronyms in order to, under which these organizations are called, and nationwide as well. But my answer will also be relatively brief. We have stood up, I talked a little bit about it earlier, the laptop loaner program. One of our first partners that we're reaching out to is our local Department of Corrections facility. So that, because right now, during the pandemic, our offices at WorkSource are closed. And typically speaking, those who need access to laptops aren't able to get them. However, at the Department of Corrections, where those with a conviction history and those who have perhaps a recent conviction history are checking in, they'll have access to that job support and that tech support and can take advantage of some of our services there. I believe that there are other services, but I am, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit more recent to my job, and I haven't directly encountered or tracked some of the other services that our organization offers. However, I would be happy to follow up that question with a written answer later.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, in the backup, David, WDAs, WDBs, WDCs, it's a national conundrum of acronyms. I just stick with Workforce Development Board. It just works. But it's interesting because, every area region has its own needs, but reentry is across the board. And we were just actually having this conversation about being able to step into the space of where we're addressing the needs for reentry programs and transition. And how does that align with also, you know, what would be the best fit? So we're having those conversations now because they're so needed. We have Purdy right in our own backyard. So we are looking at other workforce development areas who have robust reentry programs or are working with them, working and have those programs already operating. It might be just from the young adult perspective as well. I know there's a program with our sister WDC in in Thurston County, Pack Mountain. They have a reentry program, and I think it targets the young adult population. But it would be interesting to know like what others are doing and how we can align to be able to do that. But we were just having this conversation around really connecting and working with our community partners who already have these programs, and how can we as workforce development align with them and provide continued support. So our role is to convene and connect. We want to make sure that we align. So that would be how we could do something, how we could do more and extend or bridge the gap in making those programs more robust from our strategic peer view.
Thanks, Shellie.
John, I'd like to jump in. Yeah, just really quickly saying that there is some work being done with justice involved, the justice involved population in the apprenticeship space. Iowa, for example, has apprenticeship programs in all 9 of the institutions in the prison system in Iowa. Now, as you can imagine, you know, both OJT, on-the-job learning, and the training are kind of limited, you know, for this group in terms of the circumstances they're in. But I can also follow up with the audience member with some more information on what different states are doing in the space.
That'd be great. I think that, you know, that this is a big topic. And as I said, one that's close to my heart. I mean, it would warrant a dedicated panel by itself. I think that the audience member has put her website in the chat, and so if those offers to follow up are you know, something that you all are willing to do, I think that would be great. We just have a couple of minutes left. There was another Q&A question from the audience that was related to how workforce development can serve our most marginalized populations, especially due to the pandemic when many do not have access to technology. I think that over the course of several of the answers that already were given, we addressed that question from a number of different perspectives. And so I hope that for that audience member that you were able to take away at least some of what you were hoping to get from some of those previous answers. You know, we do have about 3 minutes left, and I just want to remind everyone that the full stream of this panel will be available very shortly, within a day or so, on our YouTube channel, and we will share that link to all of the attendees through the email that they registered with, and we'll also post it to our LinkedIn and our Twitter site, so folks will be able to. Oh, Aaron's just posted it in the chat already, so that's great. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we will share some edited clips, some outtakes from what, you know, seem to be some of the more on target or punchy or exciting or interesting, I don't know what the right word is. As we rewatch this, the things that stand out to us as particularly powerful for our audience, but also for the panelists, you know, we'll clip them out and make them shareable and share them with the community that we're a part of that is interested in these topics. So I guess, you know, unless there are any of our panelists that have one last quick bit of wisdom or insight or something that they just absolutely have to share, we can probably draw it to a close today, but I will invite any of the panelists that might have something like that to go ahead and jump in if you do. Okay, well, that was the requisite 2-second opening for any of you, which you did not take. And so with that, I guess that we can agree that everyone had an opportunity to share so much of the wisdom that they each bring from their little niches. And I have to say that I just love getting the different perspectives weighing in on these big problems, which are also big opportunities for all of us with our respective organizations, but also as a society and as a culture. And it's just so gratifying and invigorating to be able to spend the morning with people who really care and are putting their love and their effort towards making a difference in this crucial space. So thank you everyone for being here, and hopefully our paths cross again soon.